Thank you so much for watching, listening. We're finishing our series called Show and Tell. Did you ever do show and tell in school? I did. Thought it was super fun until I got a little too mature or more mature, and then it kind of became dorky. But we had show and tell, and the lesson that we're looking at, or this series, is all about Jesus doing show and tell. And it's an interesting series to think about because we read about it in John 8, verses 1 through 11. It's a really interesting thing because there is a woman who is caught in adultery. Jesus is teaching in the temple early in the morning, and there's a whole bunch of people listening, students. And as Jesus is teaching, this woman who is caught in adultery by the Pharisees and the scribes is thrown into the middle of Jesus' classroom in front of all these people, these like, in essence, students. And, that's kind of what they are, listening to Jesus teach. And the woman caught in adultery is exposed and humiliated, but it's a power play between the Pharisees and scribes as well as Jesus. And the Pharisees and scribes say to Jesus, hey, this woman is caught in the act of adultery. According to the law of Moses, she should be stoned. What do you say? And I love what Jesus does. He doesn't immediately answer. We talked about this last week. He doesn't immediately answer. He gives it time. There's a little bit of percolating. He bends over and begins to write in the sand. Whatever, I don't know what he's writing. And then they keep accusing, keep pushing Jesus, and Jesus stands up and says, well, he who is without sin, let him throw the first stone. And then he goes back and begins to write in the sand again. So there's time. A lot of times when there's accusation and condemning and judgment, when we keep our eyes on Jesus, give Jesus some time, then all of the accusation, the condemning, judging starts to unravel and starts to kind of evaporate. And that's what happened. Because the accusers, the Pharisees and the scribes, it says they began to leave one by one. Jesus says, he who's without sin, throw the first stone. And the oldest left from all the accusers, then the second oldest, the third oldest, until finally there was nobody left. And Jesus stands up after he's written in the sand the second time, and he says to the woman, he says, woman, where are your accusers? Instead of pointing, Jesus has open hands, and he's saying to you and to me, where are your accusers? And I think this is so important for us because when we keep our eyes on Jesus, we know that Jesus doesn't accuse and condemn, but rather Jesus forgives. I'm trying to put on this stupid little hand, having a hard time. You've got to be more coordinated than the hand, huh? But Jesus has open hands for us. And he says to the woman, where are your accusers? Where are they? And she says, I have none. And Jesus says, I don't accuse you either. I forgive you. Go and sin no more. I think this is so very, very powerful. Very powerful on this show and tell. Because if you think about it, every single person in that classroom, including the Pharisees, the scribes, the woman caught in adultery, the man who didn't get exposed with her, as well as all of the students. The only person who can forgive and offer redemption is Jesus. And I think it's very tragic that the only person who received forgiveness and redemption was the woman. And all the Pharisees and the scribes, they left. And they left in their sin and their condemnation and their judgment. And they personally never received forgiveness and redemption from Jesus in that experience. And I think this is so important for us, no matter who we are, whether we're a student watching and watching what Jesus does, open hands, forgiving heart, redeeming efforts. This is what Jesus does. And I think as they watched Jesus and they watched his compassion and his forgiveness, it models for us compassion and forgiveness, that we can be compassionate rather than condemning. We can be redemptive rather than rejection and repelling people. That we can participate with Jesus' love and reconciliation. We have the opportunity, instead of being a Pharisee and a scribe who's judgmental and hostile, and they walk away and they never receive forgiveness and redemption from Jesus because of their own, their own compulsion, their own attraction, they can't get their eyes off of sin and judgment and condemnation. And family, if we can't keep our eyes on Jesus and Jesus loving us, then we wind up sometimes being some of that critical, judgmental audience, or that group that's hostile and attacking and accusing. But I really know that Jesus wants us to stay and linger and to admit, I'm a sinner. Not just a woman caught in adultery that's like exposed in front of everybody. I'm a sinner too. All of those Pharisees and scribes, they were sinners. All of the students that were watching wide-eyed, they're sinners. You and I, you're like, well, I've been forgiven because of what Jesus did. That's absolutely true. Death and resurrection, death on the cross, by his stripes we're healed. His blood is our forgiveness. Of course, no doubt about it. But if we have received such abundant forgiveness, then why can't we do that and express that? Opulent. I'll bet you that you've been forgiven of things that you're not even aware of. I've had God speak to me and say, hey, Sarah, do you see this? I forgave you of that. And I was like, oh, that's really, I'm so grateful. Let's not be the accusing and the condemning and the judging. Let's hang out and receive forgiveness and perpetuate forgiveness and redemption through us. So I think this is so, so important. And I bring this to your attention as I finish up. One of the very sad things in this whole story, and we have the students who are watching, we have the Pharisees and the scribes who are accusing, with the woman caught in adultery. But the one person who is missing is the man who was caught who was in adultery with her. He was never present. And I think it's very, very sad for him. It seemed like he got off the hook. He wasn't embarrassed and humiliated in front of everybody. But at the same time, he never received forgiveness from Jesus. And I like that the woman caught in adultery, she went through this whole horrific experience, embarrassed, humiliated, all this, and publicly, this is just horrible. But she went through the beginning all the way to the horrible experience, to the very end of her conversation with Jesus. She went through the whole thing and walked away forgiven, freed, and redeemed. And ultimately, the relationship we have with Jesus is to be a redemptive relationship. And maybe you've made so many sins and so much error in your life that you don't even want to show up. You're embarrassed. You're like the man who didn't get ostracized, didn't get exposed. Maybe you're the man who's hiding and embarrassed and shamed. And I just encourage you to come to Jesus, because his hands are open and his heart is forgiving and his passion is redemption. So no matter who you are, student, the missing man, the woman, the Pharisee, the scribe, let's all come to Jesus. Let's all spend time with Jesus. And let's continue to stay in love and fall in love with Jesus. So thank you so much for subscribing. Of course, hit the notification bell right there. We'll give you content. We'll keep you posted when we put up new content. Here's a question for you to think about. Did you ever, if you did show and tell in school, what was your favorite show and tell? I don't know. If you didn't do show and tell, what is something you would like to show and tell? Maybe you have like a book or, some kind of memory from childhood, or your favorite bike, or maybe you have some cool like toy, Xbox thing, whatever. What's your favorite show and tell? And as we finish, here is your joke. I like this joke. I've been practicing for a little while, so you have to kind of listen, pay attention. So why will a pig that is dressed in black never get attacked? A pig that is dressed in black will never get attacked. Why? Because, this is your joke, because Batman has sworn to protect Gotham. Gotham, get it? You're like, that is awful. I know it is, but of course next week will be lots better. Thanks so much.